Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin price chart along with the altcoin market as we enter into a new week, one step closer to whether or not cycle theory is going to prove itself to be true. Coming off of 2 weeks ago, having one of the biggest volatility spikes in history, matching that of C19 and the great financial crisis, followed by the biggest volatility crash in history with the VIX all the way back below 16 again. Never before seen to see that big of a volatility crash before. With the Dow Jones having a decent sized bounce back last week, along with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, as we talked about with the NASDAQ hitting its 50-week moving average, along with Bitcoin. But as the clock continues to tick, we inch closer and closer to how much time it took for the market to finally break out from historical cycles for the cryptocurrency market. So we're going to look at that today. We're going to kind of put things into context on how long we have actually been in here. And if you're mentally kind of struggling with this is taking forever, you probably have good reason to feel that way, and you'll just see that from the time perspectives. For example, with XRP from late 2013 till 2017, just that rip right there was 1,220 days. From the peak that was set back there on April 14th, we're sitting right now pretty darn close to that. Just napkin drawing there. Same amount of days have elapsed. Now for the class of 2018 through 2021, here's a picture for you for how long we've been in here. You just go from the peak back there in 2018 to where the peak came in there on April 14th. That whole time between peak to peak was 1,198 days. So imagine the peak of the bull run, the excitement in 2017 and 2018. We go through all the horrible capitulation. We go through C19. We go through the SEC. And then we go through Wall Street bets, laser eyes, diamond hands, Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live, all that stuff. That had already all happened by the time this much time had elapsed compared to what we've dealt with right in here. Now, the thing about XRP is it did top a little bit earlier than a lot of other things did. XRP topped there on April 14th, where most assets topped over there in May, particularly around May 8th. You look at things like Litecoin in here from back in 2014 through 2017 compared to now, just seeing how much time elapsed in there. You're pretty close, but you're not all the way there just yet. But as you could see back there in 2015, 16, and 17, certainly a very rough ride. And then eventually broke out there, which an equivalent for now would be about September 8th. So if it feels like it's just going on and on and on, that's because we're really matching the longest periods we've ever had to go through in this market without any action arriving. It's not to say it's unusual, but if you're looking at it from like the context of what 2018 through 2021 was like, you certainly had already been relieved by now. All the feelings of the bear had worn off, the excitement had arrived, and everybody was holding hands singing Kumbaya. However, compared to the longest one we've ever experienced, we're still a few days short. And if you look at it in context of being like, where was actual capitulation of this market? Still, like we've talked about a lot, late August, which, surprise, surprise, is in the next week and a half. Now, of course, when all of this was happening here, what was going on with Bitcoin? Well, we can go back and look at that time and clearly see where we were with Bitcoin, sitting all throughout here, right there as it began to take off. Well, what do you know? That's the thing we keep talking about on how much time we've spent in here. So we're pushing the boundaries at this point of how far anybody's ever been pushed in this market before. And of course, the thing that was difficult about that time back in 2015 through 2017, the capitulation going here, I mean, you can just take this thing off of log scale and see that's what Litecoin looked like. Here, I'll take it off that. There you go. That's Litecoin, right? Oh, this market's dead. It's over. And then suddenly it just wakes up and goes. That story, of course, was very similar for XRP as well. Just long duration stuff. And then finally up and away it went. Add Litecoin on top of it. Same story. It all really happens right in here. No real warning. They both just kind of wake up at the same time and get going. But the moment leading up to that certainly didn't feel like that on either of these assets, especially when you take them off of log scale to see them like that. And then suddenly, boom, they both just wake up and go. But of course, by that time, Bitcoin had already marched all the way back up to the highs, going through the prolonged bear, the climb back to the all-time high, this big fall, similar to like what we were talking about back over here with how Bitcoin's price action has been relatable to what happened during that time after a completed super cycle. I put out a video about that last week. Essentially, you got into here, and this is where all that price action for the altcoin market really started to kick off, starting from no warning to suddenly just being turned on. But as we approach that time and we say, man, we're kind of entering into that window right now, and like we showed there with Litecoin and XRP, like next week and a half, you reach this time period where you're in the longest time period ever. You've got structures looking good, price action looking good. You got Bitcoin back up there near the highs like it should. You've got time ticking. You're like right there on the edge, and you say, hey, I know we've been pushed the longest ever, but we're right there. But the thing that is still just completely missing, that still is just this giant head scratcher, is that Russell 2000 stock market historically getting that exit to shoot its way out, in which if we were looking at it through this lens being like, oh yeah, for sure, the Russell's out, we're expanding, the breadth is wide open throughout all markets right now, just like 2017, just like 2020, we'd all be looking at this saying, oh yeah, we're good. But of course, this time we're just not. Now, the thing about 2020 and 2021 is they were pretty closely timed to each other. Maybe that's the case. Maybe there's got to be some surprise that happens in the Russell. They've got to happen at the same time. Still, the Russell had even broken into a new all-time high before Bitcoin ever touched its all-time high. Then over there in 2016 and 17, the Russell ended up beating out Bitcoin by quite a big margin, a couple of months. And over there in 2011 through 2013, the Russell also beat Bitcoin by about a month. So remember, the 2013, the 2017, the 2021 bull runs, they're all marked by the Russell escaping, then Bitcoin escaping and going off into its bull run as well. And so as we approach this time and we're like right there at that window, it's all this fingernail biting, because it would be very nice to just sit here and say, hey, look, the Russell's out. Well, the clock is ticking. We're right there. But this is our glaring thing still in our face. And I know you're all sick of hearing that. But I would say that 80% of my time is that I'm spending thinking about the actual market. It's sit here thinking about this dynamic and how this can resolve itself. And I think that's the thing that makes it more challenging than it actually was when you look back here on 2017 or you look back at 2020, that we definitely had this risk on environment happening in broader markets at the exact same time. And I do believe that is why we saw so many things get pulled back after hitting the retracement levels like Ethereum, Solana, and Tron, including the altcoin market cap, which hits its 702 retracement, but we haven't reached that exit velocity in the market yet because we haven't had that risk on come yet. And I think that is what really makes it so difficult just for everybody in general, is that have we been in environments where it's taken this long before? And the answer is yes, it took this long back in 2014 through 2017. And the thing that made it challenging back then is that really everything just looked dead until finally it all woke up. So we all kind of know in the back of our head, the market can do that. It can punish, and then eventually wake up. And so we know that we're like kind of in that environment with how this market has reacted so far, which makes it incredibly challenging. But the thing that, of course, makes it even more challenging and even harder knowing that is that we just don't have the macro picture at the same time. And that's what makes it the hardest. You are literally right there, which is literally right there from 2017. Like we saw even with Litecoin, 7-8 days away from the longest ever. And it's kind of requiring a hanging of the hat on the idea that something's going to show up, because right now you don't have that leading indicator that we've had in the past, which is breadth expansion, broader markets, Russell 2000. We just don't have that. And that element of surprise needs to just kind of show up when it's supposed to show up, as we talk about often with magical unicorn fairy dust or puppet masters pulling the puppet strings god, or a simulation that things will happen when they're supposed to happen, that it's kind of depending on that actually happening. And like when we look throughout the market, like we've talked a lot about like the safety trade dominance, and that it's done all the same things Bitcoin dominance did from back in 2018 through 2020. Every little step in here is all through here that we had back then in that period before things really kicked off and got going, let alone That safety trade dominance, what? Going back to the 702 retracement, then slamming it a second time. That's exactly what it did back in 2019 and 2020, is that it slams into these things 2 times, just as we have over here. So like this signals were like right on the cusp of it. The Bitcoin price chart signals were right on the cusp of it. And the altcoins would be right on the cusp of it. And it's not unusual to just sit there and just teeter for this long after capitulation. So has it been tough to be in here this long? Of course. It's knocking on the door of the longest of history. The thing that just makes it even tougher is the fact that there's not that broader expansion throughout all markets. And that's just the thing we're still all waiting for and scratching our head. And this would absolutely be incredibly easier if we had that. I would have no problem coming on here and have people yell at me, no, Bitcoin's still going down. We're like, no, forget that. Right? Like that's what it was like back in 2020 after C19, is that we were seeing the market rally. We were seeing broader markets rally. It was breadth participation throughout broader markets. But after C19, people were just utterly terrified. But we had that macroeconomic dynamic happening in broader markets. And when we had this happening back in 2017, we had that macroeconomic broader participation of markets to where you could just sit there and say, hey, man, things are looking good. And it's not to say that won't show up. It very well could. It just isn't here right now. And so while I want to come on here and just say, look, time is ticking. All elements are the same. This is great. XRP is great. Litecoin is great. Everything is right on time. We're all on schedule. Everything is good. All systems are go. I want to come on and be like that and just be a moon boy, because this is moon boy stuff that's happening right here. This is moon boy stuff right here. Like we've talked about with like Solana, Sui, and Tia, these are moon boy stuff right in here. Like you've just got all kinds of good stuff looking here throughout the cryptocurrency market. But I try to stick as true to the data as I possibly can and say, well, what is the element missing? The element missing is the macroeconomic breadth and expansion in markets. And that's just not there yet. And maybe we get surprised and they all happen on the exact same day. Because I posted this over there on Twitter last Friday, that even this whole move that we had in the crypto market from late October all the way up in here until March, everybody thinking Bitcoin ETFs. No, it was a move happening there in broader markets that you could see that the Russell is stuck in a range for the same amount of time. I mean, just look at Ethereum and look at the Russell, right? I mean, peak, bounce, waddle, crash, then range bound the whole time. And then what happens? Spring for the Russell, last point of support for final phase of Wyckoff accumulation. We've talked about a lot about that, how difficult that is at the end of whether you can get last point of support or spring phase. And you can see that even in the crypto market, we had various ending phases throughout the whole market, whether it was LPS or if it was spring. And here you can see even in the Russell, it had spring. And then eventually it shoots its way out. What happens? The market goes with that as well. And so even in this circumstance, it's not like there was some huge lead that happened here for the Russell, right? So like there's still that hope to hold on to and say, well, look, it's not like there was some massive lead that took place here for the Russell for the market to be able to rally. The Russell and the market rallied together. And so while sitting here saying, hey, look, in all past circumstances, we do know the Russell was the lead. Well, we do know that here within this last year, they were really occurring simultaneously, which leaves that hope there to say, hey, look, maybe the wake up all happens at the same time and they actually just run together rather than them being some type of lead happening with the Russell, right? It's not outlandish to say that, but it's just when we go back and we look at these things in these contexts, and if we're going to view them from that context to say, well, what were the other things that were happening at the same time? And the other things that were happening is that there was actually broader participation, expansion happening throughout markets that were a leading indicator of this actually ending up happening. And we don't have that leading indicator right now, but we also did see that it didn't exactly lead here in late 2023, early 2024. They happened simultaneously. So like you could still hold on to that hope that those could occur at the same time, right? But it's still having to just kind of remember that it was a leader in those past moments. It's not leading right now. And while I wish that picture was just perfectly clear on that, if like there was just the absolute lead there in the Russell, the best thing I can do on the YouTube channel is just paint the picture as clearly as possible as I can to try to just give you more data to process and understanding where you're sitting in here, right? How it's going to resolve itself exactly, I'm not quite sure. But I can show you all of these things and say, look, we've watched this thing for the last 3 years. We've seen these things play out, all of these phases. It then goes on and has this big 33% crash right here, just as it did back in 2017. That inevitably led to things taking off. That's also right when we were right here for Litecoin and for XRP. We're at that particular phase where all of that occurred. It all happened from right here. The same goes for XRP. This was that moment where it all happened at. I can tell you, if you're feeling beat up by the market, has the market beat people up like this before to this extent? Absolutely, with the same dynamic, with Bitcoin getting back up to those highs, these assets just waddling sideways for as long as they have. And then eventually the market just woke up as Bitcoin sat back there at those highs. Now I can come on here and I can paint a super mega moon boy picture by saying all of that and leaving out the part where the macro picture was there. But I'm trying to also give you that perspective as well to say, hey, look, where's that element? Why is that element not here this time? Because it was there during the 2013, 2017, and 2021 bull runs, and it's just not there right now. The fortunate thing is we did even see it here within the last year that they did just kind of wake up together. So it's not to say that can't happen. But if we're going to truly paint this picture and be sincerely honest with the data, then we say, hey, look, the thing that was also leading was breadth. So I come to you with a message of hope and optimism of being like, look, if you've been through it this far, you're kind of right there at the finish line where the answer is going to reveal itself. There's an absurd amount of things in the actual crypto market alone that favor a resolution being positive. And while most things in the crypto market are very similar to that time period happening, there is one piece of data that is not similar, and that was a lead happening over there in breadth and expansion in broader markets. And that's just the honest way I have to paint it to you. And like I said earlier, I spend 80% of my time when I'm thinking about the crypto market on how that resolves itself. And the problem there of it being like, well, it's not leading. It's always been the leader. Why is it not leading right now? The only way I can resolve that within my own head is by looking at it from this perspective and saying, look, well, at least in this last year, we did see a moment where they woke up together at the exact same time. So there is that. But over the course of the next 3 weeks, we are going to cross through that time period of where this market has never gone this long before without things waking up in a significant way. It has never taken longer than 3 weeks from right now. Fortunately, a lot of this market looks very similar to how it looked when that happened several years ago. There's even rhyming of this market currently right now to our past cycle. And as you've noticed watching this channel for the years with all these things marked on here, the only reason we even use this is because of the absurdities of how these things will land on the exact same days, and the peaks coming in on the exact same days, and the breakouts happening on the same days and the same ranges. And when Bitcoin officially broke out in here, it happened right there on day 1,237. We know that even right in here on day 348, they both hit their peaks at the same time and then go on into capitulation. We know when they were range bound, they both broke out and hit the top of these ranges to eventually escape on day 699. And day 1,237 lands you on September 2nd that the breakout in Bitcoin should be occurring. Post-capitulation date for the altcoins would be August 27th. And so it's a super nail-biting time because there's all this stuff. I mean, no matter what angle you look at it from, whether it's altcoins, Bitcoin, safety trade dominances, all these different things, you're just right on the cusp. It's just, where is this thing? And so as we approach this time and we go through these next couple of weeks, it's still just going to be all of this. It's going to be focusing on this. And in the event that this thing gets its way out of here, well, then that's the final criteria. That was the last thing that was missing from it all. We have all the things, all the dynamics in the crypto market looking great. It's just this glaring thing over here that's just missing. And this has to somehow resolve itself. And so I don't know how many times I can talk about that. Except show you everything. I mean, I can show you everything in the crypto market. I can show you where we're lined up, how you're doing on cycles, how long you've been in this. If you're emotionally beat up from the market from being in it so long and it hasn't taken off, well, it's like, you know what? That's really just exactly what happened in here when we went through all this stuff. That's what this market was doing that whole time. So I can provide you some hope and be like, hey, you're at the finish line there on that. That's where that thing got resolved at. But also knowing that, this was also one of the ingredients that has been part of all of it since the beginning of the crypto market. This has always been one of the ingredients. And I don't know how many times I can repeat that, probably more. But as we approach this moment of time, all eyes are going to be over here on this guy and seeing that it can get its way out. The US dollar still continues to get slammed, which has historically been a good thing for crypto. It's just that macro risk on thing that's just like, where are you? So we'll keep our eyes on it in the coming weeks. I'll try not to repeat myself too much, but I think I pretty much painted the picture in here. The next couple of weeks, really like the next week and a half, was that triggering point for the altcoin market. The next 2 to 3 weeks was the triggering moment for Bitcoin. The thing that is just missing out there is that risk on environment in broader markets rather than being a consolidated market. I posted about that on Twitter as well last week. Only 11% of the S&P members have outperformed the S&P index. 89% of the S&P members have underperformed the S&P index. We're wanting to see that thing really open up. And if that does, and if it happens right on time, well, there you go. Cue the simulation to be in full play. And so hopefully it all works out. Hopefully we're right there on the cusp of it. We'll keep our eyes on it. So on that note, we'll go ahead and go through the wrap up. I hope that you had a wonderful weekend. Hopefully you had an opportunity to catch up on the newsletter over here on blockchainbacker.substack.com. The most recent one talked a lot about what we've witnessed over the last 2 weeks, especially that big flash crash that we saw back there on Monday, August 5th, the dynamics of the market, what happened there, and how that recovery happened and the technical levels of them occurring at that nothing really broke in the market when that happened. Diving into detail about how, like we're talking about in this video, the decision is approaching. We're reaching that moment on cycle theory, which has really been talked about a lot in these last 2 newsletters. I do audio record all of these, includes a nearly 24-minute audio voiceover in there. Of course, if you sign up for the newsletter, you get access to all the past ones as well, with all the research that's been included in all of those. That's available over here on blockchainbacker.substack.com. Of course, you could check out bcbacker.com with over 40 videos and 11 hours of content teaching you how to set up your own charts and your own indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. Also discussing a lot of the historical behavior of the cryptocurrency market, which is a lot of stuff even we talked about today, but we go into extreme detail in there. There's links down here in the description of this video to bcbacker.com and to the newsletter right there at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, here we go. It's a new week, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need to pick me up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.